Welcome to today's lesson on using factors and multiples with fractions. Let's start with multiples. Multiples are used when finding common denominators. Finding the lowest common multiple, often called the LCM, is an important step when adding or subtracting fractions. So let's do an example with two numbers. We're going to find the multiples of 3 and 4. So when we're finding multiples of 3, we're counting by threes. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. We're going to stop there because we're trying to find a common multiple between 3 and 4. So now we're going to move to 4, and we're going to list the multiples of 4. This time we're counting by fours. 4, 8, 12. Once we can find a common multiple, like 12, we can stop. So again, you can see that we have a common multiple of 12. This is going to help us when we add fractions. So now we're adding two fractions, 1/3 and 1/4. We remember from our multiples on the previous page that our lowest common multiple is 12. So I look at the denominators for the denominator in the first one and ask myself, what do I have to multiply 3 by to get 12? And it's 4. Whatever I multiply the denominator by, I have to do the same to the numerator. And likewise, I do the same thing with 4. I know that I have to multiply it by 3 to get 12, and I do the same thing to the numerator. Okay, now we're going to change these fractions to equivalent fractions with a denominator of 12. So I get 4 over 12 plus 3 over 12. Now, if you remember, when you add fractions, the denominator stays the same when they're common. So because we have common denominators of 12, that denominator stays the same. And we just add the two numerators. 4 plus 3 is 7. So we use multiples to find our common multiple of 12, which in turn helped us find the common denominator. Then we wrote equivalent fractions and added. Now let's move on to factors. Factors are used when reducing fractions. Greatest common factor, or again also known as GCF, helps you reduce a fraction to its lowest terms in one step. So we're going to try two different numbers here, 12 and 28. So factors are numbers that multiply together, whole numbers that multiply together to get 12. If I want to list the factors of 12, I can always start with 1 in itself, and I like to list them in order, so that's why I'm leaving a space there. Then I know that 2 multiplies with 6 to get 12, and again 3 multiplies with 4. So my factors of 12 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Doing the same thing, knowing the numbers that multiply together to get 28. This time I'm going to leave a larger space because it's a bigger number. I might have more factors. So 1 and 28 multiply together. 2 and 14 multiply together. 3 isn't a factor. 4 is a factor because 4 multiplies with 7. And that's our last factor. So knowing your times tables helps you find factors. Okay, so now just like before, I want to try to find the greatest common factor, or the highest number in this list that they have in common. And quick scan, I realize that 4 is the greatest common factor for 12 and 28. So now I have a fraction, 12 over 28. I just found the greatest common factor being 4, so that means I can divide both numbers by 4 evenly. And it was the greatest common factor, so once I do that, I'm going to have my fraction in lowest terms after I divide. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. 28 divided by 4 is 7. So writing 12 over 28 in lowest terms is 3/7. Now if I wouldn't have found the greatest common factor and I just went with any common factor, again, oftentimes we look at numbers and say they're even numbers, so I could have divided them both by 2, which would have been correct because they both are divisible by 2. That was a common factor. So I would have had 6 over 14. But then I would have had to divide by 2 again to get 3 over 7. So I still got the same answer, 3/7. I just did it in one step. So that's the advantage of using the greatest common factor. It reduces the number of steps and could possibly reduce the chance for error. So that was our lesson on factors and multiples and how they are used in fractions. And hopefully you enjoyed that and found it useful. So look out for more tutorials in the future.